My very first year, within the first month, I had a client who would have tripled my bottom line revenue for the year. Found out within 2 days that they had lied about something, immediately fired them. The money can be good. I'm not afraid to go back and work for a company if it's sacrificing integrity.
Yeah.
And welcome to episode 9 of the Archive podcast.
The last time ever in single digits.
Ooh.
There we go.
That's exciting.
Can I also address the elephant in the room?
Yes.
Your first ever episode without a black t-shirt.
It is. And no laptop. The truth on the black t-shirt is I forgot to do my laundry.
Really?
Yeah, I did.
I knew it wasn't on purpose.
This is my backup t-shirt. Mm-hmm. And yep.
You walked in this morning and I was like, it just, something felt off, you know?
So you're not the only person. So I have not only those black t-shirts, I have 5 of them, but I have 3 gym versions of those t-shirts. They're like a lighter material made by the same company. And I walked in and my workout buddy was like, "You all right?" I was like, "Yeah, why?" And he was like, "You're not wearing black." It was like an olive Adidas. So yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, we have a small cold brew today as well. This is the first ever episode with not a medium or bigger.
We're trying to keep it reined in.
I've had a lot of coffee today and I'm drunk on caffeine at the moment. Yeah. And so now I'm overdosing after this.
All right. So you're gonna be redlining on anxiety.
Yes.
I like it. 6 ounce flat white as always. But all right, here's the question to start us out with. So where have you been in the last week? What have you been doing?
So this is really cool. Let's just talk about us for a second. This was our first week since last episode ever having a client in the Archive studio. You and I.
Yeah. Yeah, like shared. Yeah.
A shared client in this space.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
I thought it was really fun because we finally got to see what is this space utilized like. So over behind you, the camera is showing, it's the kind of seating area. And poor Jace, when he was in here for the first time, who's behind the camera, everyone, hello, Jace. There's nowhere to sit in here other than our 2 chairs. And so seeing the space utilized by other people and then hearing them make a comment because you had a great playlist playing, they're like, "This was really fun."
Yeah.
And that was just like, "Oh, this is a great idea. This is going to work." Yeah.
And it was like some of the things that have kind of rubbed off on us in this space. Like, you know, we just gotten used to.
Yeah.
We got like to see people experience it for the first time again.
Yeah.
I didn't really like so what we've been doing is we've got this wall with the Archive logo and we put our Polaroids up there, right? Of everybody that comes in the space.
Yeah.
It kind of just like, I didn't think much of it. Like, you know, I thought it'd be cool, but then seeing people's reaction of when they got to sign their Polaroid and put it up and the enjoyment that came from them, that really shocked me.
Without a doubt.
I did not expect people to love that as much as they do.
But
and
you know,
it's such a simple thing.
This is something I want to say about you. You're super good at, whether you do it consciously or subconsciously, it's impressive still. You create vibes. And I don't even care that I'm 33 and I'm saying the word vibe.
Sounded so old.
I don't think I'm legally allowed to say the word vibes. But it's true. Like there's a certain point where being with you in a room, you're bringing the party with you, you know, like you're bringing this energy with you that people want to be part of. And so like the Polaroid idea is not something I would have thought of.
Yeah.
Just not. And yet it's my favorite thing about the studio.
Well, this was something I inherited when I was in college. We moved into this house off campus. And I remember I was studying abroad the year before we moved into that house. And I told everybody that we were studying abroad with, I was like, we are moving into this house when I get back home, and it is going to be the house for people to feel welcome. And so we did a similar thing where everybody that came in, not everybody, but a lot of people that came in got their Polaroid and we put it on the refrigerator. And those memories like are so special to me. And every time I see someone from college, that is the first thing they mention is like that house. And it was the most like uncomfortable situation because then I realized, oh my God, this is a place I live. What have I done? There's 20 people in my house. It's like 1 a.m. But that was like, that's just something I've always had kind of instilled with me. If someone's going to come into my space that I'm in, like, I want them to feel like this is their space.
Without a doubt.
And I feel like we did that this past weekend with our first clients. And it was like, I don't think we have truly let that sink in of how quickly this thing has just tied together. Like 2 months ago, we sat down and what if we shared a space?
Yeah.
And 50, 60 days later, people were in our space, paying us to be in our space, number one, and then two, loving like what we've created in such a short amount of time. And they're just the first.
I think that's a beautiful thing I'm realizing, or maybe learning about life right now, is, and this is a pretty common saying, that life takes a long time and then it happens all at once. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's a cool part I will say about kind of getting into my mid-30s ish now, is so many things that I wanted for so long, worked for, they're all happening right now all at once. And I love, again, just kind of shout out to you. This morning we met out on the balcony and we talked about like, hey, just 15 minutes, because we both had work to do. Right. But just like, hey, 15 minutes, Jace was out there with us and we shared, okay, what are our goals that we're working towards? And then we're going to check back in with each other next week. And it's not like a punitive thing, but it's a rather like, hey, let's make sure that we're being really intentional with all the privilege, all of the gifts, all of the talents that we've been given opportunity. Like, let's just make sure we're being intentional about it.
Yes. And there's been moments in my life where I feel like I've went through great times and didn't see them for great times in the moment, because I was just like going full speed ahead, which is good. Like, go full speed ahead. But every once in a while, I'll just like realize the moment that we're in, right? Like, we're in such a special moment, and these are the times like that we're going to be telling our kids and our grandkids about when we come into this town in 40 years and we say, well, maybe it still is our studio. Who knows? But like, we're saying, hey, that used to be my studio. Yeah. And then we share about the times we had in this place. It is very important just to like take a step back every once in a while. And I'm glad we did it on this episode just to start out.
Be super grateful for it. All right. So with that being said, why don't you tell the folks what we're talking about today?
Yeah. So, and I think we'll kind of steer it just naturally, organically as we get going. But we're going to talk a little bit about how to land our dream clients, how we've landed our dream clients. And they've kind of paid us what we feel like we're worth. And that is a beautiful thing. Number one, to work with people who you love to work with and be around. And then number two, you get paid to work with those amazing people, and how we've done it over the span of the last few years. And then the good news too, and we're going to get into this, but this is like another little part of what we're talking about, is there is no structure to this thing that is content, that is communications, because it's so new and everybody's figuring out. And that's the beautiful thing. There's no like, if you want to run a sub 3 hour marathon, guess what? There is a exact thing you have to do. What we do, it's all preference, really.
Yeah, there's no mold for this. And I think that's what I want to do is, first off, validate people who are feeling a little lost or confused in doing something, whether it's this or something else, that there's not exactly a mold for. And then also give some encouragement to them, like, hey, in the event that you feel lost, first off, it's totally normal. But second of all, here's some practical encouragements along the way. So you ready to get in?
100%.
All right, so talk to me. Tell me the story about the first time that you got reached out to by a client that you were like, what?
I would say the first time I really experienced that is when one of the cities that neighbored where I grew up from reached out to me. The city, like the representative for that city. And they saw my potential. And that was super cool to me, because I was like, wait a second. This place that is the oldest town in Kentucky wants me to tell their story. And that was like one of the coolest things. Like, having that conversation, and then the guy on the other end of that phone call was like one of the coolest guys and still is the coolest guys I get to work with. And he's just trust me to lead his vision of storytelling, to lead his vision of telling the story of what is Harrodsburg. That was like one of the moments I was thinking like, wait, I get to do this for a normal job. That was the first instance for me.
What I find special about that story is that it produced in you a sense of not just awe, but almost humility. Like, who am I?
Right.
And I think that's one of the coolest things about being in a profession like we are, is we do really get the chance to work with some people who are doing some things. Like I just got a text message that said, hey, I'm about to walk into so-and-so's office. And I can't tell you who this the office is, but it's one of those offices where you're just like, I'm sorry, you're going where?
Right.
And they reached out to me for encouragement. And you're just, so we're having these moments where like working for is Harrodsburg seriously the oldest town in Kentucky?
Yeah.
Like,
there's only 50 of those in the U.S. for every, you know, like.
That's what I'm saying. Like, how incredible is it
Yeah.
that you get to share the story of a place that not only has been around longer than any other Kentucky town, but is doing amazing things today.
Right.
Like that produces in me a sense of awe on your behalf. I'm like, man, that's incredible. But also, here's the other thing is, and this would be the encouragement I would give to other people who are in similar situations, you deserve it.
Yeah.
Because you are that good at what you do. I joke with people all the time. I got a text message the other day from a family member who was reaching out on behalf of a coworker looking for a wedding videographer. And I was like, listen, man, on a serious note, I'm looking to introduce some legislation to my local representative this year to make it illegal to be as good at wedding films as Austin is.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but I'm serious. Like there's a certain point where it should produce in us, I think, in those of us who are exploring positions where there doesn't seem to be a mold, should produce both a sense of humility and man, who are we to get this? But then also it should produce a sense of confidence. Like, well, they wouldn't be asking if they didn't see the skill set and the competency.
Yeah. And that one of my first realizations when I got my foot in the door, and this is really good for anyone who gets the opportunity to work with someone they've dreamed of working with, blow their expectations out of the water from the get-go. Because what has happened, that was 3 years ago, and now I've produced roughly 50 videos. But if I didn't take that like first one as serious and as like intentional as I possibly could, I might have never got the 49 after, right? And that was like my first big piece of advice that I learned, or big key that I learned, was when you get your foot in the door, take advantage of the opportunity, because that opportunity also leads to a lot more dream clients down the road. Because if you're working with someone who's awesome, chances are they know some more people who are awesome to work with. Yep. And they want to lead you to those people in a short time after, right?
Yeah. To that point, I would say that was one of the things I didn't understand when I first got into the gig. Because I thought, man, there must just be an overabundance of super skilled people doing the same thing. And what I realized is there's not.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that like we are like the next, great filmmakers or the great strategists in communications. It means to say that there is a shortage at a certain level of professionalism of people who are able to work with clients and just be chill.
Yeah.
Who are organized, who are kind to work with, who show up when they say they're going to show up, who are at least halfway organized, like all those things that are what we often think of as the basics of running a business. I can't tell you how many people who have been in business twice as long, 3 times, 4 times as long as I have tell me, hey, listen, best piece of advice I always give young entrepreneurs, show up when you say you're going to show up, do what you say you're going to do, and you'll be surprised at how fast you succeed.
And don't oversell either. Like that is one thing that I had to learn pretty quickly in business, was I was trying to oversell myself and then I couldn't meet certain expectations. And I saw a few dream clients like go out my fingertips because I couldn't give them what I promised I could, because I felt like I had to oversell myself. When in reality, I should have just been honest and say, like, here's what I can do for you. And then anything above that exceeds their expectations, because what they expected is what I told of them, right?
Yeah.
I do want to bounce a few things back and forth, like how to land a client that is wonderful to work with, like how to do that. What I think is the number one tip is, number one, when you get your foot in the door, like exceed expectations. But before you get your foot in the door, I think creating a brand that will gravitate the people you want to work with. Because sometimes we think about these, like last week we talked about what can a business do for a strategy, a communication strategy of how to grow a following, right? But before that, what is it that you're creating that can lead to the people you actually want to follow you? Like, am I creating content, my personal brand, around what people that I actually want to follow? Like, if I'm just creating things for a following, but not the people I want following me, is it actually useful? You know what I mean?
It's okay. So I think there's two questions in there that I heard. One, what type of content should you be creating in order to attract certain clients? Then how to actually pitch them.
Yeah.
Maybe? Is that fair?
Yes. And this was a point I also wanted to make. I want to let you just kind of tag in on one of the schemes you've been experimenting with here recently.
Yeah. So, so I want to answer the first one, or take a crack at it, if that's okay.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of value in making content that has nothing to do with your work. So I put out Reels, TikToks, Instagram, whatever. And they're oftentimes about just observations that I have. So last night I put out one. It's called, like, Let's Not Be Mean on the Internet.
Yeah.
And what I find interesting about that is every time I post a piece of content like that, or many times that I do, what I find is that people that I talk to who are reaching out for work a month or 2 months down the work will reference something that they've seen of mine on social media. And what I'm connecting the dots on, and have been for the last couple of years, is people like to work with people. They don't like to work with brands.
1,000%.
So they agree with your take on, hey, like, let's be a good person, or hey, here's a funny observation I had on, work or coffee or whatever. It personalizes you, and that's who people want to work with, is people they can relate to. Like, I'm not going to cold call a company. I'm going to call someone up and be like, hey, what was your experience working with so-and-so? Like, was it a good experience?
Right.
Because I'll be honest with you, someone can have 99% perfection skill, but be a 20% human, versus someone who has 80% of the perfected skill, but it can be a 90% human. And which one am I choosing every time?
Yeah.
The second one.
Yes.
The second one.
As creative people, it is so important for us, and this is one of the reasons I launched my YouTube channel, and I really want to push a lot of my chips into that, is because I want to build a brand around my life. Not in like an egotistical way where I feel like my life is so good and people need to like want to tune into my life. But people want to work with people, and if I can sell them on who I am as a person, that is winning the battle right there. So like around my YouTube channel, like I want people to see Austin Greer. Like I want people just to see myself. When the last like few years I've been so focused on my portfolio or my work and making sure people want to book me just because of what I produce. But what if they book me because I'm actually like showing glimpses into who I am in my life, and then they start resonating with actual things that they care about, and not just seeing content that's produced, but they see like everyday real life type of stuff, like, oh, you're going on a run today? I like to run. Oh, you're going on a run day? I would like to get into running. How did you get into running? And then there's that conversation, and it blossoms into a connection. And then when they have a friend who needs a videographer, they're thinking about me because we connected on running, and not even because they looked at my content. Like, those are the things you need to sell yourself on if you're wanting to land your dream client, is sell your brand and sell your life, like your personal brand. Sell that.
I totally agree. I think, and if there are some people who are watching this, they're like, man, you guys are crazy. You're conflating your real life with these business terms. No, these are simply the terms we're using to describe things that they're nomenclatures. They're nomenclatures that we would normally say instead of saying brand, you could say reputation.
Yes.
What's your reputation? So when we say we're selling people on us, we're just saying we're introducing who we actually genuinely, authentically are. We're not, in fact, I'll say this, hot take alert, fake it till you make it is absolutely garbage advice. No one wants me to show up acting as if I've been in the game for 40 years.
Right.
That's why I never try to take, or at least I hope I don't, I never try to take the road of, well, let me be the sage on the stage. I want to take the guide beside, like, hey, if anything, I might be either right there with you or one step ahead. Let me just share with you what I'm learning.
Yeah.
You know, no one wants to listen to a guy who's 33 on saying, you need to do this with your life. You need to do this. Maybe it's just sharing instead. And I like that's what the tone of this podcast is. It's just being helpful. Like, here's some encouragements. Take it or leave it.
Here's what we've done wrong.
Yeah.
Like, learn from our mistakes, because that's what it's been the last like 6 years, is like we did things wrong for so long, and now we're just throwing in a little of the right stuff.
Absolutely, man.
And good things are happening. That's all it is. And we've only kind of been at this for 2 months now of sprinkling in who we are to people.
Yeah.
And we've already seen the impact that just a little bit of sprinkling in, like, who is Austin Greer and Caleb Phelps, like the impact that can have on not just like business but just a community of people that want to be involved. Like, that's what we've begun to build here.
Absolutely. So I want to answer your second question now. Okay. So, like, what's one of the practical tips on pitching, right? So a few years ago, I did this for the first time. I was still working at the school system for the time, and at night I was working on, launching the firm. I had not launched fully yet. It wasn't full-time by any means. But it was starting to build. It was gaining momentum. I was getting, into the, $36,000 to $50,000 a year kind of range with that side thing alone. And so it was at this point where I realized, I was like, okay, if I'm going to continue to build this, I don't want to work with just everyone who comes to me, because I don't always align creatively.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that I morally disagreed with anything. I mean, to each their own. It was just like I wasn't always passionate about.
Well, it's also you're doing a service to the people that reach out to you.
Oh, totally.
And you just say, like, listen, I don't think I'm the best person for what you're wanting. Like,
no.
I don't want you to waste your money.
Yep.
If we are not aligning creatively, when you could spend your money in investment somewhere better.
And that's what I would do. I had a list of people that I would point them to, your name being one of them. And so what I began to realize was, maybe instead of always being on the receiving end of, client, asks, I can be on the offense. And so what I began to do was, so my website is my name.me, because there's another Caleb Phelps who has .com and has had it for like the last 15 years. And he's super skilled. Like I think he's into like automotive stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, props to that guy. He's great. So it's CalebPhelps.me. And then what I would begin to do is / and create a custom page with their name on it. And so I would create this page, and it would be a quick message of like, hey, so-and-so, I think what you do is really interesting. Here's just a brief 90 second introduction of who I am and what I do. And I would put in an unlisted YouTube video link that would go, from my YouTube page. It would play, and I'm literally looking at them in the camera and saying like, hey, so-and-so, I really admire this about you. Underneath of it would be just my contact information, and then I would send it to him. I would either DM it, email it, text it to him. And every single time that I've done that now with countless people, it has always yielded like I've never seen this before. And it worked so well a couple of weeks ago, where it was like kind of breaking into that next echelon of clients. And it was like, oh man, this is what I realized. People just want to feel seen.
100. Yep.
And that's all it is. Like, could we cold call 1,000 people and get 100 jobs from it?
Sure.
Maybe.
Yeah,
I just I'm not interested in it. I don't want to do that. When I reach out to someone, I want to make them feel seen, because I've looked them up. I've done my homework, and this is how I feel like I could help them. And I feel like that's the key. how can I help them? How can I be
Yep.
of service to them?
Let's go back to the beginning too, like how to land a dream client. A dream client is not a client that you just cold call and hopefully they say yes. It's someone you want to align with, right? Like
Yeah.
the people that I have had the biggest pleasure of working with are people that want to see community push forward, that are passionate, that have actual energy for what they're wanting. Like, it's not just a media person at a company and they have to check off this list. No, it's like someone who's actually passionate about the thing they want to tell a story on. Those are the people I want to work with. So you're not cold calling just anybody. You're connecting with who is that person I would actually want to work with.
So I want to give you a story if it's okay. So I stumbled into a Zoom meeting once upon a time and landed a massive client that has changed the course of my life. And so the story goes like this. I get an email with a Zoom invite to this meeting, of which I have no idea. I take it to my current boss at the time, and he's like, hey, listen, I don't know what that's about, but you have my full permission if it's a waste of your time just to get out of it. So I attend the Zoom meeting, and it's a bunch of leaders from across the Commonwealth. And the idea of the meeting is like, hey, let's develop a communication plan around this thing. So everyone's giving their input, and I'm sitting there because I'm like the low man on the totem pole in this group. And so then it gets to the end, and I'm like, hey, you might try this and this. Well, the person who's running it, the executive director, Rhonda, is like, hey, can you stay on for a minute after the Zoom call? So everyone gets off of the Zoom call. And she's like, I want to talk to you a little bit. Fast forward a few months, I'm like moonlighting for them. So they were one of my first bigger clients before I had left the school system. And then when I launched the firm full time, like they were one of my main clients. And that has forever changed the course of my life.
Yep.
The work is something I think about that work all the time.
I know you do.
Because I'm so passionate about the subject matter. And it's also been great to learn from Rhonda, to learn from her entire team. It's been such this life-changing thing, but it all came down from, we can be as strategic as we want to and send these emails, send these pitches, these personalized things. But sometimes there's accidental beauty that happens to us. It collides like, meteors with Earth. And I think that's the other thing I would ask people to consider is be strategic, be on purpose, but also be open to magic, man, because sometimes it happens.
Do not let the right opportunity go. If you feel like your intuition is telling you, I need to work with this person, work with them. And what that means for me, so there's been people that have approached me and I got really good feelings. Like from talking to them, my intuition was good. I was fully like on board with what their mission, whatever they wanted to accomplish. Like I was like, I'm bought in. And then the pricing structure wasn't there, but that was something I was willing to negotiate because I wanted to be a part of it. And what's happened is saying yes for a lesser price has led to so much more opportunity. Number one, financially, and then number two, just like creatively, with my passions, like what I line up with. And it is something special when you can create something you're passionate about. Is it special when you can create and make good money doing it? 100%. But it's even more rewarding when you create something you're happy and proud to share. Like that documentary I showed you that one day.
It's so good, by the way.
I did not make a ton of money off that. And it's one of my most proud pieces of art that I've ever got the chance to storytell.
I'm going to interrupt you rudely to say there are sometimes things in compensation that are just as valuable or more valuable than money.
Yes.
I am not saying fall for the old thing of, well, this will pay for itself in exposure. Anyone who offers that, like, oh, hey, you'll get exposure out of this and that'll be worth it. Those people are trying to manipulate you. But it can happen as a result of something. And I think those are the beautiful moments where you're like, yeah, dude, this was worth it.
How to land your dream client 101, sometimes take the pay cut. And see what leads from it. If your gut's telling you that you should cut your price in half to make sure you can work with that person that you feel good about, work with that company you feel good about, cut your price in half. Like, go with your intuition. That's what I've done the last few years, and it has never led me astray when I went with my intuition.
I'm so glad you brought up that point. There is something to going with your gut. That is how, and this is my decision-making framework. Okay, so I've got a system of questions I will ask myself. But what it all ultimately starts from is the gut feeling that there's something here.
Yeah.
And the good, like I will say, so Whit and I have been married for 11 years. She knows me well enough now to know that if I say I have a feeling about this,
Yeah.
she knows that I've asked the right questions, that I'm never going to bet the safety or the financial health or whatever of our family against it. So like all those obvious things are checked off.
Yeah.
But it's like when I'm like, hey, I've got a crazy idea. She's just kind of like, cool, because so many of them have now paid off. And I think that that's the thing that you have to get into the habit of doing, is listening to that voice in your mind when it's like, hey, let's try this creative idea. And here's the deal. Sometimes it's like bread at the grocery store. You got to dig a few loaves back to get to the good bread, right?
Yeah, okay.
So sometimes you're going to put out content and it's going to flop. Case in point, let's own our funny failures. I don't consider it a failure, but a funny flop is I shared last week's podcast where you interviewed me, right? About like this thing I'm so passionate about. Got 2 likes on Facebook.
Yeah.
Did that bother me? Not a chance.
No.
They didn't, because it's like, it's one at bat.
Yeah.
It's one and guess what? I was right back the next morning posting another piece of content. And I think that's the thing I want to tell people is it's not about the likes. It's not about the DMs. It's not about the engagement. It's first and foremost about, am I creatively fulfilled by this thing? And then second of all, it's such a long game. Like, we are doing stuff now. We are making moves on the chessboard that we know will not pay off for 5 to 10 years.
100%. And whenever we first talked about the archive, I remember going to people and I told them I have a great feeling about this. And that was the thing. It's this thing that I know is going to take a year or two to even really see it lift off the ground. But I'm willing to invest my time and energy into something because I know my intuition is telling me to run with it. And that is like one of the biggest things. We sometimes try to push down that feeling because we know it might not yield results for a year or two. So we think it's not worth it. But a year or two is, as I get older, a year or two is nothing.
It's no time, man.
And
it's no time.
I hate to be that guy and say that, but it really isn't. And so if, like, right now, 26, by the time I'm 28, if I have it figured out a little bit, I've won. Like, I've figured it. Like, most people don't get that. And so I'm willing to take 2 years and see what this thing could become because my gut is telling me it's the right thing.
When I ran the wood shop back in the day, like 10, 15 years ago, I would go to these shows where, people are selling, like vendors are selling, it was like high-end shows or whatever. And, I would take my massive 7-foot custom-made dining room table. I would take all this decor that I had made, that I'd bought a CNC machine, designed it all, cut it all out, and I would make, I don't know, $35 for 2 days. I couldn't even make enough to cover my gas. And it was a failure financially, obviously, a lot of times. I made some money from it, but all that business ultimately did was 2 things. One, it gave me opportunity to try and experiment, to learn contracts, to learn invoicing, to learn all of those hard lessons up front. And ultimately, financially, what it did is allowed me to pay my gas for 18 years. So I was able to leverage that cost away from our personal budget, because we are budget people, have been from day one, down to the penny. Like, we can show you the last 11 years of our books of how we spent money. But then it allowed me to buy my first camera. So it was like, okay, so there was something.
Yep. And
then I got into slinging sourdough, and then I was, working for the school system part-time. That became full-time. And then like all these steps came along. But what's what it all came down to, man. It's like, listen, if you're not okay with the thing that you're trying taking 2 to 5 to 7 years, listen, man, just get patient.
Yep. It's
going to take some time. And it's like one of these things, it's kind of like in Wendy, right? So like Wendy in The Wizard of Oz, she sees Oz, but what if she saw Oz just to get her to walk down the yellow brick road, and it took her somewhere else even better? Well, Oz is what she saw that got her to start walking, but what if she got to go somewhere better, And I think about that a lot when I think about creative endeavors or businesses. Like, be okay with it taking a while.
Well, too, like I remember people not really like made fun of me, but they weren't into what I was doing when I first started videography. Like nobody, it was whatever. It was like, oh, he's doing that thing. And now that I've stuck with it for 5 to 10 years now, those same people are the ones asking for advice who kind of recycled through 8 different things through those 6 years and didn't stick with anything. And so now they've got nothing that has gave them results because they didn't stick with anything. They just kind of bounced the thing to thing after a year because it didn't work after 12 months. Well, duh, like it's not going to work after 12 months. And that is the thing. Like you got to be okay with being a little embarrassing at the beginning. And that's with a dream, like landing a dream client.
Absolutely, man.
Like be fine with that 12 months without like having the right person you're working with.
Yep.
And this is something else you said, like even the woodworking thing, you also got to just know when to say no to certain people. That is one of the things I've learned the most about working with great people. You have to know when to say no to the wrong people. And so like for me in this season of life I'm in right now in business, it's saying no to weddings. It's not because those are the wrong people. I'm just not passionate about it as much as I was. So I've done 20 to 25 a year for the last 4 years. I'm just kind of not digging it anymore. Like I've came to the point where I've done that. I loved it. I don't love it as much. And so I'm willing to say no because I know I want to transition to the client I want to work with. And again, I'm not saying to a specific couple or anything. I'm just saying to that clientele. So you have to know when to let certain things go.
Yeah.
That is one of the most important things.
Yeah. All right. You ready to land the plane?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So wheels down here. When someone is thinking about, hey, how in the world do I make a potential client? How do I land this dream client? How do I do it? Don't talk to me about tactics because we've talked about that already a little bit. Give me 30 seconds on what should your mindset be when approaching the client?
I would say you ask them a few things. I would say, number one, to figure out if they are the right person to work with. This is what I would say up front is like, you ask that person, why are they doing or why do they want to do what they're setting out to do? You can find pretty quickly what a person's priorities are or their passions are or anything along those lines when you say, why is it that you're wanting to accomplish this thing? So that's number one. You find out who a person is pretty quickly from that. Number two, how to land them. I'd say you share and give them what you have to offer and be honest with that. So many times, like I said, I wasn't honest with what I could offer, and then other times I was honest with what I could offer. And whenever I offered what I truly could at the best of my abilities, that is when I landed those people. Because the moment they saw me actually follow through with those things is when I closed the deals and when I was actually able to keep them on retainer. Because that's the whole goal. You get someone once because of maybe like you get your foot in the door, but you retain them because of what you promised them and what you delivered them after that.
I love it, man. My only thing that I would add on to that is make sure your values align. So there are certain things that you know about me from overhearing the Zoom calls that I'm in and things like that that I value.
Yeah.
I'm not going to work with clients just because they're going to pay really well. My very first year, within the first month, I had a client who would have tripled my bottom line revenue for the year. Found out within 2 days that they had lied about something, immediately fired them.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it. Not doing it because it's not worth my sleep, your sleep, anyone's sleep. The money can be good, but like, listen, man, I'm not afraid to go back and work for a company if it's sacrificing integrity.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to have to look at my kids and be like, no, I did this and it was supporting this thing that like we're not down with. So like, is it doing good in the world? Is it doing good by people? Is it doing good for people? Yeah, let's rock and roll,
And one more thing too, going back to the mold thing, like there's no right way to do certain things, and you don't have to do the things you don't want to. This is something I've been telling Jace the last month. I said, do whatever you want to do here. Whatever you like to do, let's do more of that. Whatever you don't like to do, tell me, and you won't do it. Because I don't want him to go after things that he just doesn't enjoy doing. Like that's what I did for a while, and it's exhausting. So lean into the things you just love doing, especially at a young age, and continue to do those things. And at a certain point, it's like the snowball going down the hill. Like, yeah, it might start off as a little snowball, but it's just going to pack and pack and pack more. And then at the end, like, you have a massive snowball because you've stuck with that one thing you love to do. And it's just gotten bigger. It's gotten better, and it grows over time when you put your full energy into something you love to do. So that's the best thing about landing a dream client and having them like actually value your worth, is when you stay true to that client and stay true to that thing you love to do for so long. That's when it actually grows.
There's no better way to end it. Mm-hmm. Well done, man. All right, so this is episode 9. Next week we will be, as you said at the beginning, double digits, bro.
We love that.
Does that sound good?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so for this week, this is the Archive Podcast. We'll see you guys next week.
Peace.